Quinn Naylor pressed his forehead against the cool viewport glass of the interstellar cruiser Marigold, watching the glimmering swirl of the Centera Nebula. He could still smell the sterilized tang of the alien docking bay clinging to his jacket. It had been a long trip from Earth, through 2 wormholes and 1 customs inspection that involved an awkward retinal scan by a creature shaped like a floating fern. "Why do they always assume we're smuggling eggs?" he muttered to himself. Behind him, footsteps clanged against the metal floor. The ship's diplomatic officer, a woman named Priya Mendez, approached with a pad in one hand and a frown on her face. "You're late for the welcoming dinner, Quinn," she said, scanning the pad. "Ambassador Halvrix is already seated. You're the Earth rep, try not to insult anyone tonight." Quinn turned. "As long as no one serves me another gelatinous orb that smells like a tire fire, we'll all get along fine." Priya didn't smile. "This is a major trade opportunity. The Galari Culinary Guild doesn't just invite anyone to their capital." "Please don't offend their head chef. I'll try not to gag in public this time," Quinn said, following her down the corridor. The Galari capital station floated above a gas giant like a silver lily pad. Inside, it was all polished obsidian floors and low humming lights that cast pale blue shadows on the walls. At the center of the banquet hall stood a long table already laden with dishes that looked like they were grown inside a nightmare. Ambassador Halvrix, a tall Galari with violet skin and 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, rose from his chair when they entered. Beside him stood another Galari, shorter, with a chef's apron stitched from what looked like dried kelp. "This is Chef Kelmar," Halvrix said. "He oversees sustenance protocols for the guild. He has expressed strong concerns about human cuisine." "Concerns?" Quinn asked, sliding into a seat across from Kelmar. The chef leaned forward. "Your species consumes oxidized flesh, emulsified dairy proteins, scorched grain composites, and fermented vegetables. Your meals are carcinogenic, acidic, and nutritionally erratic. It is culinary chaos." Quinn blinked. "So, you're not a fan of tacos?" Kelmar's face stiffened. "If your taco is what I sampled from the diplomatic archive, it contains shredded bovine muscle, coagulated milk, and a pepper compound that registers as a biohazard on 7 systems." Priya kicked Quinn under the table. Kelmar continued. "For the purposes of hospitality, I have prepared a meal based on your species' nutritional charts, but adjusted to Galari safety standards." He gestured. A server glided forward with a plate of pale green paste, a cube of translucent jelly, and a beige disc that quivered when the air moved. Quinn poked the disc, jiggled. "Is this cooked?" "It has been gently vibrated to stimulate kinetic flavor molecules," Kelmar said. "Chewing is discouraged." Quinn glanced at Priya. She gave him a warning look that said, "Do not start an interspecies incident." He took a tiny bite of the paste. Tasted like cucumber and wet cardboard. The jelly was worse. Kelmar watched him closely. "You appear distressed." Quinn nodded, mouth still full. No, it's just complex. I have studied every known Earth dish," Kelmar said. "They each violate at least 5 intergalactic food safety guidelines. Your gastronomy is an affront to biochemistry." "I mean, have you ever tried a burger?" Quinn asked, wiping his tongue with his napkin. Kelmar recoiled. "Ground animal tissue compressed into a disc and seared over open flame? Topped with a neurotoxic sauce and placed between bleached seed husks? It is culinary perversion." Quinn leaned forward. "You're judging it without ever tasting it. That's not science. That's just snobbery." Halvrix raised a hand. "Perhaps a compromise. You may prepare one of these burgers for Chef Kelmar, under controlled conditions." Kelmar's eyes narrowed. "If I consume this burger and survive, I will issue a formal apology to the Earth Culinary Delegation. But if it is as toxic as I suspect, I will request a planetary food embargo." Priya sighed. "Do you even know how to cook one?" "Please," Quinn said. "I spent 2 summers flipping burgers at my uncle's diner in Nebraska." 2 days later, Quinn found himself in a sterilized Galari test kitchen, wearing a heat-resistant smock and arguing with an automated spice dispenser. "I said 2 pinches of salt, not a full dump truck." The kitchen was a hybrid of Galari biotech and Earth-imported tools. The grill was a flat sheet of heated plasma and the spatula looked like a surgical implement. Priya entered with a small crate. "Special delivery. Earth-grown ingredients cleared by customs." You owe me 2 favors and a week of silence for getting this through. Inside were vacuum-sealed packets of ground beef, slices of cheddar, fresh lettuce, pickles, tomato, and a small bundle of sesame seed buns. Perfect, Quinn said. Let's make history. Kelmar entered behind her wearing a respirator mask as a precaution. He carried a scanning wand and a portable detoxifier. You will prepare the item, he said. I will monitor contamination levels. Quinn rolled his eyes but got to work. He prepped the patties, seasoned them lightly, and placed them on the plasma grill. The sizzle made Kelmar flinch. That sound indicates cellular rupture, Kelmar said. That's called flavor, Quinn replied. Soon the burgers were assembled, warm buns cradling the meat, cheese melted just right, crisp lettuce layered beneath. Quinn slid one across the counter. Kelmar scanned it. Toxicity within tolerable bounds. Proceeding with ingestion. He took a bite. The kitchen went silent. Kelmar's eyes widened. He took another bite. And another. By the 4th bite, the mask was off, the detoxifier forgotten. This is... Kelmar's voice trembled. What is this sensation? That's joy, Quinn said. Kelmar devoured the rest in record time. Do you have more? Quinn grinned. I have enough to change your entire menu. Over the next 3 days, Kelmar returned. Each time he demanded a different variation, bacon cheeseburgers, sliders, even a breakfast burger with a fried egg. He analyzed the seasoning ratios, studied the Maillard reaction, and began scribbling notes faster than his assistants could keep up. Eventually, Kelmar summoned the entire Galari Culinary Guild for a demonstration. Quinn stood before 100 alien chefs, each skeptical, each with their own respirators. Kelmar raised a hand. I was wrong. The burger is not a toxin. It is a revelation. He bit into a double-stacked patty. This flavor. The cracks opened the mind. The guild murmured. One by one, they tried samples. The hall filled with the sounds of stunned chewing. Quinn turned to Priya. Think this'll get us a trade deal? She nodded. They just offered us 4-star systems worth of spice contracts. That night, exhausted but triumphant, Quinn sat in the mess hall, holding a burger of his own. Kelmar approached, holding a small recipe tablet. I have questions about this ketchup. Does it always contain vinegar? Quinn laughed. You're hooked now, huh? Kelmar looked solemn. I have spent my life chasing purity. But perhaps perfection lies not in sterilized paste, but in charred meat and messy joy. Quinn raised his burger in a toast. To chaos. Kelmar mirrored him. To flavor. Quinn jolted awake to the shrill whine of a proximity alert, the kind that only blared when something was close enough to kiss the hull. He rolled off the cot in his quarters, still in grease-streaked clothes from the kitchen, and slapped the console. Who's about to rear-end us now? The screen flickered to life, displaying a sleek vessel emblazoned with the emblem of the Valari Ascendancy, an interstellar cultural authority notorious for dragging entire civilizations into compliance with their aesthetic standards. The ship hovered uncomfortably near, its angular design bristling with sensor arrays and emitters calibrated for mood analysis. A voice blared through the intercom, formal and dispassionately melodious. This is the Valari Ascendancy. We have received reports of unauthorized culinary influence altering Galari cultural equilibrium. Prepare for inspection. Quinn groaned. I didn't even get breakfast. By the time he reached the docking ring, Priya was already engaged in a stiff exchange with a Valari adjudicator whose elongated form shimmered beneath a translucent cowl. He floated an inch off the deck, emitting the faint scent of ozone and lavender. And you're asserting that a sandwich has destabilized centuries of curated flavor doctrine. Priya's tone hovered somewhere between disbelief and a migraine. The adjudicator didn't blink. What you refer to as a sandwich has initiated a viral deviation cascade. Galari chefs are now experimenting with entropy-based flavor pairings. Yesterday, one attempted to combine fermented root tubers with a triple smoked protein slab and something called nacho drizzle. Cultural panic is imminent. Kelmar emerged from the corridor, his expression oddly sheepish. We did not anticipate the rapid absorption of these concepts. There was an incident involving a food centrifuge and a converted fusion welder. Several apprentices were hospitalized with euphoria-related vertigo. The adjudicator turned to Quinn. You will submit to a cultural audit. We require a full neurological scan and an inventory of all culinary influences you have introduced. Quinn folded his arms. Only if I get to scan you back. Fair's fair. The Valari blinked once slowly. Reciprocal analysis is not standard. Neither is banning food because it's too delicious, Quinn said. By mid-afternoon, the inspection was underway in a converted conference room filled with blinking equipment and a suspiciously uncomfortable chair. The Valari medical technician, a spindly creature with wrist-mounted diagnostic tendrils, adjusted the neural interface on Quinn's temples with the enthusiasm of a tax auditor. Please remain still. We are mapping your gustatory cortex and cross-referencing with known mimetic contagions. Quinn rolled his eyes. If I had a credit for every time someone called my cooking an infectious agent. The technician ignored him, tapping a sequence that sent tiny pulses through the interface. Subject exhibits elevated amygdala activity when recalling cheese-based stimuli. Noted. The scan continued for nearly an hour, during which Quinn was subjected to questions ranging from the molecular structure of grilled onions to the socio-political ramifications of comfort food during planetary crises. Meanwhile, outside the chamber, Priya paced. This is absurd, she snapped. We're being treated like we weaponized a condiment. Kelmar nodded solemnly. It is possible we underestimated the psychological volatility of barbecue sauce. Several guild members have begun composing flavor sonatas in its honor. The adjudicator floated past them, eyes narrowed. According to our field reports, Galari youth are now engaging in clandestine burger exchanges on sub-frequency channels. There are rumors of a secret sauce cult forming in the lower districts. Priya rubbed her temples. You realize this is food, not a revolution. Historically, the adjudicator replied, the difference has often been academic. That evening, Quinn was released from the scan room with a mild headache and an official warning pinned to his chest. Subject may be considered a culinary vector pending further review, he read aloud. That's going on my resume. Back in the Marigold's galley, he found a small crowd waiting. Mostly Galari, but a few others, two species Quinn hadn't seen before. Tall, feathered bipeds with spiraled eye ridges, and squat, armored beings whose tongues flicked out to sample ambient moisture. One of the feathered ones stepped forward. We heard you create edible anomalies. Quinn raised a brow. Is that what they're calling it now? Kelmar gestured to the galley. They wish to learn. I have prepared a list of safe ingredients, but they are eager to see the process. Priya leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. You're going to need gloves, a translator, and probably a liability waiver. Quinn pulled on an apron. I'll settle for a functioning stove and volunteers who can digest gluten. The next few hours blurred into a flurry of slicing, searing, and cautious tasting. Quinn demonstrated how to caramelize onions without setting off the carbon alarms. He showed them how to balance acidity with fat, how to toast buns just enough to resist sogginess, and why pickles were non-negotiable. One of the squat aliens attempted to deep fry a tomato using a plasma filament. It exploded. Everyone cheered. Kelmar scribbled notes furiously, muttering about flavor resilience thresholds and heat-induced euphoria curves. The feathered being attempted to replicate the burger but insisted on using 3 separate sauces, one of which glowed faintly in the dark. By midnight, the galley reeked of cooked meat, charred starch, and at least one unidentified root extract that made everyone's hair stand up. Quinn collapsed onto a crate, exhausted but grinning. This is either intergalactic diplomacy, he said, or a really weird episode of a cooking show. Kelmar approached, holding a steaming plate. We have named this hybrid creation the Unity Stack. It contains 27 ingredients, several of which are not technically legal on this station. Priya sniffed it. It smells like ambition and heartburn. The feathered alien chirped. We seek export rights. Quinn laughed. You're going to need a whole new customs category. The next morning, a representative from the Valari Cultural Tribunal returned with a verdict. He stood in the galley doorway looking like someone who'd accidentally walked into a jazz concert while searching for a library. After review, we have determined that the Earth Culinary Ambassador's actions constitute a Class 3 cultural disruption. However, due to the voluntary nature of the exposure and the positive diplomatic cascade, sanctions will not be imposed. Kelmar clapped his hands. This is a great honor. The Valari held up a finger. With conditions. All future recipes must be documented, categorized, and accompanied by a full psychological risk assessment. Quinn raised his eyebrows. You want me to file paperwork for flavor? The Valari didn't blink. Ignorance of spice law is no defense. Later that day, the Marigold prepared to depart. Priya loaded the final cargo manifest while Quinn packed the last of his cooking equipment, including a grease-stained spatula and a small notebook filled with alien interpretations of burgers. Kelmar approached the airlock. When will you return? Quinn shrugged. Depends. Is there a galactic council on milkshakes? Kelmar tilted his head. What is a milkshake? Quinn grinned. Oh, buddy. You're not ready. The hatch sealed behind him as the Marigold disengaged from the station. Quinn leaned back in his chair, watching the stars blur past. Priya sat beside him, sipping something that steamed faintly purple. You really think a milkshake's going to top this? He winked. It's not about topping. It's about what comes next. Behind them, in the galley, the Unity stack sat under a stasis dome still warm, still slightly glowing. A beacon to chaos, curiosity, and the undeniable human urge to feed the universe one bite at a time. 3 days after departing the Galari capital, the Marigold dropped anchor in orbit above Tarsus 4, a minor trade hub best known for its neutral diplomatic zones and a gravity calibration that made Earth standard weights feel oddly heavier. Quinn groaned as he heaved his equipment cases off the cargo lift, sweat forming under his collar. Feels like I'm dragging a cow up a hill, he said, eyes narrowing at a stubborn crate that refused to slide. You opted to bring a full grill setup into a diplomatic complex, Priya said from behind a stack of sealed containers. You could have just carried a briefcase like a normal envoy. Normal envoys don't get invited to a multi-species nutrition summit because their food's causing minor political upheaval, he said, elbowing the crate forward. Besides, this is about proving humans aren't just culinary chaos monkeys. She snorted. So your plan is to throw a cookout in front of a committee of xenobiologists. They asked for a demonstration of Earth's metabolic adaptability. I'm just giving them a show. The summit hall was a repurposed arboretum, glass ceiling overhead, soft thermal lighting, and an artificial breeze that smelled faintly of crushed thyme. Representatives from 14 species had gathered, each seated according to their atmospheric requirements. A thin haze divided oxygen breathers from methane inhalers, and the aquatic delegates floated in self-contained globes suspended 20 feet above the ground. At the front of the hall stood a raised platform with a sanitation field and a long preparation table. Quinn stepped into the field and immediately sneezed. Great! It filters out pollen but not irony. A Trivaxian moderator, six-limbed and translucent-skinned, adjusted the amplification collar around its thorax. Begin your presentation when ready, Human Quinn. All observers are equipped with neuro-olfactory dampeners as a precaution. Quinn unpacked his station. Fresh ingredients, vacuum-sealed for customs compliance, were arranged in color-coded bins. He started with a batch of starch-based flatbreads, rolling the dough with rhythmic precision. The room was silent but for the occasional hum of a translation node. This is called a wrap, he explained, tossing diced vegetables into a searing pan. It's modular, portable, and nutritionally balanced if you don't screw it up. The aquatic representative pulsed its dome. A translation unit clicked. Why not use nutrient slurry dispensers like rational species? Because that tastes like regret and despair, Quinn said, flipping the pan with a flourish. We for more than fuel. It's memory, celebration, rebellion. Sometimes it's just because we're bored. The methane breathers murmured among themselves. One of them tapped a data slate. Kelmar, seated near the front beside Priya, leaned forward. Human cuisine is unpredictable, but it evokes consistent emotional resonance. This is scientifically significant. Quinn assembled the wraps quickly, his movements deft but unhurried. He passed one to the Trivaxian moderator, along with a breakdown of its molecular composition. Low acid, no known allergens, and enough protein to run a marathon or insult a bureaucrat. The moderator took a cautious bite. Moments passed, then its thorax expanded with a sudden intake of air. This is structurally harmonious. The flavor distribution is intentionally asymmetrical yet balanced. Quinn wiped his hands on a towel. We call that a good bite. The aquatic delegate signaled again. Do humans often consume meals in handheld form? Constantly, Quinn said. Sometimes we even eat while driving high-speed vehicles through rainstorms. A ripple of alarm passed through the methane sector. The rest of the session passed with increasingly pointed questions. The Zalari ambassador asked about the human gut microbiome's tolerance for fermentation. Quinn explained kimchi and probiotic yogurt with such enthusiasm that one delegate requested a bacterial culture sample. Another inquired about meat aging practices, to which Quinn replied with a monologue about dry rubs, salt crusts, and enzymatic breakdown that left half the audience stunned and the other half quietly salivating. At the end of the demonstration, the moderator stepped forward. Human Quinn, your presentation has generated 73 requests for sample acquisition and 3 concerns of culinary overreach. We will deliberate and return a consensus within 1 standard cycle. After the summit adjourned, Quinn and Priya found themselves in the Marigold's med bay. Not because of the food, but because Quinn's back had seized up from lifting a crate full of ceramic griddles. Hold still, said Dr. Liao, jabbing a cold probe under his shirt. You've inflamed your lumbar fascia. Again. I thought I was cleared after the last strain, Quinn said, wincing. You were. Until you decided to deadlift a portable oven. Priya sat nearby, scrolling through the summit's post-session logs. You've been cited for recreational thermochemical risk behavior. Quinn groaned louder. That's not a thing. It is now. The Valari registered it as a new behavioral category. Dr. Liao applied a regenerative patch and slapped his shoulder. You'll be fine in 12 hours. But if you lift anything heavier than a spatula before then, I'm feeding you through a tube. 12 hours later, the final verdict arrived. The Marigold's comm screen lit up with a message from the Interstellar Nutritional Ethics Council. Human culinary methodology has been deemed culturally volatile but medically compelling. You are authorized to continue demonstrations under supervision, with the stipulation that all meals be accompanied by a full metabolic profile and an emotional stability forecast. Quinn blinked. An emotional what? Priya, read further. They want to correlate flavor experiences with psychological outcomes. You've accidentally turned lunch into therapy. Kelmar sent a private message via secure channel. It simply read, The Guild is preparing a symposium on spontaneous flavor improvisation. You are expected. Quinn closed the screen and leaned back. Did we just get clearance to keep cooking across the galaxy? Priya nodded. With restrictions. You're being watched, cataloged, and occasionally applauded. Sounds like high school all over again. She stood, stretching. So, what's next? I was thinking something warm, comforting, maybe a stew. Something that simmers. No new summits, she said, pointing at him. No new species. Just one meal. On the ship. Quietly. Quinn held up his hands. Stew. 1 pot. No witnesses. Hours later, the Marigold's galley was filled again, not with delegates or judges, but with the crew. Engineers, navigators, technicians. People who'd spent weeks eating hydration tablets and vacuum-sealed paste. He ladled out bowls of a slow-cooked lamb and lentil stew, fragrant with cumin and turmeric steam curling up into the recycled air. A mechanic took a bite and closed his eyes. This tastes like my grandmother's house. Quinn smiled. Then I did it right. No speeches, no scans, no cultural audits. Just food and people and the quiet clinking of spoons. For one evening, there were no negotiations, no debates about flavor ethics or interspecies digestion thresholds. Just shared warmth and the understanding that sometimes, just sometimes, a meal could be enough.